Morgan is 28, my husband said, staring at me across our dining table. She makes me feel alive again. Her father's offered me a partnership in his investment firm if I leave you. He leaned forward, eyes cold. It's time to end this, Lorna. What Sean didn't know was that for the past decade, I had been the majority shareholder of Westbrook Technologies, the very company where he was chief operating officer. The company he believed he was building toward becoming CEO one day. The company where his mistress, Morgan, had conveniently been hired 6 months ago. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I sat there, my cup of Earl Grey growing cold between my palms, studying the man I'd spent 15 years building a life with. Once upon a time, his smile had been my compass, his laugh my favorite melody. Now, at 43, Sean Westbrook looked at me like I was an inconvenient detail he needed to erase. A partnership? I repeated, keeping my voice calm despite the storm brewing inside me. That sounds like a significant opportunity. Sean had always been ambitious. When we met at Berkeley, he was the brilliant engineering student with big dreams and bigger plans. I was the quiet business major who fell for his charisma and vision. We married right after graduation, against my family's wishes. My father, Richard Hayes, was a third-generation investor who'd built a financial empire from his grandfather's modest foundation. But I wanted Sean to succeed on his own merit, not through my family's connections. It is, he confirmed, a flash of excitement betraying his attempted solemnity. Trevor Blackwell's firm manages over $3 billion in assets. Morgan says he's been watching my work at Westbrook for years. He thinks I'm wasted there. Trevor Blackwell. I knew him, a second-tier player who'd been trying to get his hands on Westbrook Technologies for the past 5 years. How convenient that his daughter had appeared in Sean's department just as we were developing our groundbreaking neural interface project. I see, I said, taking a sip of my tea. And Morgan? Is she part of this opportunity? Sean at least had the decency to look uncomfortable. She understands me, Lorna. We've grown apart over the years. You're always so focused on your foundation work, your travels. When was the last time you actually asked about my projects? About what matters to me? The irony almost made me laugh. If only he knew that every project proposal he'd submitted over the past decade had crossed my desk first. That every major decision he believed the Westbrook board had made had my fingerprints all over it. I had championed his career from the shadows, ensuring his talent had the platform it deserved. 15 years, Sean, I said quietly. 15 years we've built together, and you're throwing it away for a partnership and a woman young enough to be your daughter. His jaw tightened. Don't be dramatic. Morgan is hardly a child. She has 2 master's degrees, and her insights on the Nexus project have been invaluable. The Nexus project, our most confidential initiative, the one that would revolutionize human-computer interface technology, the one that Morgan Blackwell had no clearance to know about, let alone contribute to. You've shared Nexus with her? I kept my voice measured, but inside, alarm bells were ringing. This was no longer just about infidelity. This was corporate espionage. Not the proprietary details, he backpedaled, but his eyes shifted slightly. Just the concept. She's brilliant, Lorna. Her ideas could take it to the next level. I stood, up slowly, walking to the window of our penthouse. Below us, San Francisco sparkled in the evening light, oblivious to the earthquake happening in our 15th floor home. Let me understand, I said, turning back to face him. You want a divorce? So you can marry Morgan, whose father will make you a partner in his firm. And you've been discussing our company's most classified project with her. Sean rolled his eyes. Our company? You've never worked a day at Westbrook. You have no idea what we do there. What Sean didn't know, what almost no one knew, was that Lorna Hayes Westbrook wasn't just the founder of the Hayes Foundation for Women in STEM. I wasn't just the philanthropist wife who organized charity galas and sat on nonprofit boards. 15 years ago, when Sean and I were newlyweds struggling to make rent in our tiny Oakland apartment, my father had called me into his office on Montgomery Street. "Lorna," he'd said, sliding a file across his mahogany desk. "There's a small tech company I'm considering investing in. Westbrook Technologies. Your husband's applying for a position there." I remembered staring at the logo on the file. "You're not going to interfere, are you? Sean wants to make it on his own." My father's eyes had softened. "That's admirable. But I'm offering you something different. The company needs capital. I'm prepared to provide it, but in your name. Silent partnership. Sean never needs to know." I had hesitated, torn between respecting Sean's pride and recognizing a smart investment. "Their neural interface research is promising," my father continued, "but they need someone with Sean's expertise. If the company succeeds, your investment succeeds. And if it fails, then you lose your investment and Sean loses a job. But you both learn something valuable." I took the file. 51%, I said. "If I'm investing, I want control." My father had smiled then. "You are my daughter after all," and so began my double life. To the world, I was Lorna Westbrook, the supportive wife who ran a foundation for women in technology. But in boardrooms, across Silicon Valley, I was L.H. Hayes, the reclusive majority owner of Westbrook Technologies, who attended meetings via secure video calls, face always in shadow, voice slightly distorted. For 15 years, I had guided Westbrook from a struggling startup to a technology powerhouse, and for 15 years, I had watched my husband climb the corporate ladder, believing it was all his own brilliance and hard work, never knowing that I was frequently the deciding vote that approved his promotions, his projects, his vision. Now, looking at Sean across our dining room, I faced a choice. I could reveal everything, show him that his betrayal wasn't just personal, but professional. That the company he was planning to leak secrets from was in fact mine. That would be satisfying. Certainly. Or I could play the long game. "How long have you been seeing her?" I asked, my voice softer now. Sean seemed surprised by my change in tone. 6 months, he admitted. "It wasn't planned, Lorna. These things just happen." 6 months. Exactly when Trevor Blackwell had made his most recent attempt to acquire our neural interface technology. Exactly when Morgan had been hired as a consultant in Sean's department. "I see," I said, picking up my phone. "And when were you planning to move out?" He seemed relieved by my apparent resignation. "I can be out this weekend. My lawyer will contact yours about the settlement. I'm prepared to be generous, Lorna. The penthouse, your foundation funding, the vacation house in Napa. You won't need to worry about money. How magnanimous of him to offer me what was already mine." I nodded absently, typing a quick message to my assistant, Felicia. "Initiate protocol checkmate. Full board meeting tomorrow, 9 a.m., attendance mandatory." "No need to rush," I told Sean, setting down my phone. "Take your time packing. I have some foundation business to attend to this weekend anyway." He looked at me with a mixture of relief and confusion, clearly having expected more resistance, more drama. "You're taking this well?" he said cautiously. I smiled, thinking of the board meeting tomorrow where L.H. Hayes would finally show her face. Thinking of Sean's expression when he realized just who he had betrayed. Thinking of Trevor Blackwell's scheme crumbling before it began. "Let's just say I've learned to take the long view, Sean," I replied, my voice steady. "Sometimes the best response to a setback is simply to reveal your true position." Berkeley, 2010. That's where it all began. I was sitting in the university library, buried in financial projections for my business ethics final, when someone dropped into the chair across from me. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. You're in Professor Mitchell's corporate finance class, right? I looked up, annoyed at the interruption, and found myself staring into the most earnest blue eyes I'd ever seen. Sean Westbrook, the engineering wunderkind everyone was talking about. The guy who'd built a rudimentary brain-computer interface in his dorm room and demonstrated it at the technology showcase. Yes, I replied cautiously. Why? I'm developing something that needs a business plan. My engineering professors love the tech, but they say I need to prove commercial viability. He pushed a hand through his already disheveled dark hair. I heard you're the best in the business school. I should have been flattered, but I was suspicious. Growing up as Richard Hayes's daughter had taught me caution. People always wanted something from the Hayes family. And who told you that? I asked Professor Mitchell. She said you're the only student who's ever challenged her venture capital model. His smile was disarming. Look, I can't pay you, but I can offer coffee, lots of coffee, and my eternal gratitude. I remember thinking how refreshing his directness was. No pretense, no subtle maneuvering to get close to the Hayes fortune. He didn't even seem to know who I was. What's the project? I asked. His eyes lit up. Neural interface technology. Imagine controlling computers with your thoughts, helping paralyzed people move again, revolutionizing how humans interact with machines. His passion was infectious. 3 coffee meetings later, I was helping him develop a business plan. 2 months after that, we were dating. By graduation, we were engaged against my father's explicit wishes. He's using you to get to our connections, my father warned. He doesn't even know about the family business, I countered. I'm just Lorna Hayes to him, not the Hayes Investments heiress. My father's skepticism only hardened my resolve. I would prove that Sean loved me for me, not for my family name or fortune. We married in a small ceremony with just a few friends present. None of my family attended. For the first 2 years, we struggled like most young couples. Sean took a modest position at a small tech startup called Westbrook Technologies. No relation. The coincidence of the name always amused us. I started working at a nonprofit focused on getting girls interested in STEM fields, carefully building my own identity separate from my family's wealth and influence. We lived in a 1-bedroom apartment in Oakland, took the BART to work, and counted pennies at the end of each month. Those were simple days, but I remember them as some of our happiest. Sean would come home buzzing with ideas, sketching circuits on napkins, explaining complex neural pathways to me while we cooked dinner in our tiny kitchen. Then came my father's proposal and my decision to become the majority shareholder of Westbrook Technologies. As the company grew, so did Sean's responsibilities and salary. We moved from Oakland to a loft in Soma, then to the penthouse in Pacific Heights. I expanded my nonprofit work into the Hayes Foundation for Women in STEM, using my increasing consulting income, actually dividends from Westbrook, to fund scholarships and mentoring programs. All the while, Sean believed our improving lifestyle came from his success at Westbrook. In a way, it did. His brilliance and hard work had helped turn my investment into a fortune. But the myth of our relationship became that Sean was the provider, the visionary, while I was the supportive wife. With a passion project, you've never had to worry about the real world, he once said during an argument about finances. Your foundation is a wonderful hobby, but someone has to pay the bills. I swallowed my pride and let him believe that narrative. After all, I had created it. As Westbrook Technologies grew, Sean changed. The eager young engineer became a shrewd executive. Ambition sharpened his features and hardened something in his eyes. His work hours extended. Our conversations shortened. At company events, where I attended as Sean's wife, not as the owner, I watched him transform into someone who thrived on power and recognition. The board approved my proposal for expanding the Nexus Project team, he told me one evening 3 years ago. They finally see my vision. 3 years of fighting for this, and we're finally moving forward. I nodded enthusiastically, not mentioning that I had spent weeks convincing 2 reluctant board members of the project's merit, that I had personally approved the additional $30 million in funding, that it was my faith in his vision, not just the board's, that had made it happen. "That's wonderful, Sean. I'm proud of you," I said instead. He barely heard me, already typing an email on his phone. That distance, his growing detachment from our relationship while I remained intimately connected to his work, became our new normal. 6 months ago, things shifted again. Sean became secretive about his phone, working later than usual, taking calls in the other room. The classic signs were all there, but I was distracted by a different concern: unusual data access patterns in the Nexus project servers. As LH Hayes, I received security briefings about potential corporate espionage. Someone was accessing neural interface schemas at odd hours, viewing files they shouldn't be viewing, downloading more data than their projects required. I authorized a quiet investigation, expecting to find some mid-level employee selling secrets to competitors. What I didn't expect was to discover a connection to Sean's credentials. His access codes were being used to extract data about our most sensitive technology. When our head of security, Cooper Jenkins, brought me this information, my first instinct was to defend Sean. "There must be some mistake," I said during our secure video conference, my face obscured as always. "Dr. Westbrook has been with the company from the beginning." "The logs don't lie, Ms. Hayes," Cooper replied. "We've tracked unusual access patterns for weeks. Either his credentials have been compromised or he's deliberately extracting data," I finished. "Keep monitoring, but take no action yet. And Cooper, this stays between us." That same week, Sean mentioned a new consultant in his department, Morgan Blackwell, a neurotech specialist with impressive credentials. And just like that, the pieces began falling into place. I had background checks run on Morgan immediately. Daughter of Trevor Blackwell, founder of Blackwell Investments, a firm that had made 3 separate offers to buy Westbrook's neural interface division over the past 5 years. Each time, I had personally vetoed the acquisition. Now his daughter was working closely with my husband, and proprietary data was flowing out of our servers. It didn't take a neural interface to connect those dots. But even then, I didn't want to believe Sean was involved knowingly. Perhaps Morgan was using him, manipulating him to get access. Perhaps this was professional, not personal. Until the night I came home early from a foundation event and found Sean's car still in the garage when he was supposed to be at a late meeting. Until I heard his laughter from our home office, followed by a woman's voice. "They have no idea how valuable this could be," Morgan was saying. "Daddy thinks we could leverage this into a $1 billion valuation easily." I didn't confront them then. Instead, I silently backed away, drove around the city for hours, and began formulating a plan. LH. Hayes might operate in the shadows, but she would not be betrayed, personally or professionally. The morning after, Sean announced his intention to divorce me. I woke up early. He had spent the night in the guest room, his new normal for the past few months. I made coffee and settled at the kitchen island with my tablet, reviewing the board meeting agenda I'd prepared with Felicia late into the night. I heard the front door open and close quietly. Curious, I walked to the window and watched Sean hurry to his car. 7:15 a.m., an hour before he usually left for work. He was meeting someone. My phone rang. It was Margaret Westbrook, Sean's mother. After 15 years, my relationship with her remained complicated at best. "Lorna, dear, are you free for brunch today? I need to speak with you." Her voice was syrupy sweet, always a bad sign. Margaret had never quite accepted me. From the beginning, she'd viewed me as not good enough for her brilliant son. The daughter of a humble librarian and a community college professor, I'd presented myself as coming from a modest background, a necessary deception to maintain my cover. I suppose I could meet you at Fiona's cafe around 10, I replied, already anticipating an unpleasant conversation. Perfect. And Lorna? Let's keep this between us girls. When I arrived at Fiona's, Margaret was already seated at her favorite table by the window, impeccably dressed in a Chanel suit, her silver hair perfectly coiffed. Darling, she said, air-kissing my cheeks. You look tired. Not sleeping well? It was her standard opening, a seemingly concerned observation that was actually a criticism. I'm fine, Margaret. What did you want to discuss? She sipped her mimosa. Before answering, Sean called me last night. He told me everything. I maintained a neutral expression. Did he? He's very concerned about how you're handling the situation. He says you're being suspiciously calm. She leaned forward. We both know that's not like you, dear. In 15 years, I had never lost my temper with Margaret, despite ample provocation. The not like you comment was pure projection. Perhaps I've matured, Margaret, she waved dismissively. Sean is worried you might try to make things difficult with the divorce. He has an important opportunity with the Blackwell firm, and he can't afford any distractions. The waiter arrived to take our order. Margaret ordered a small fruit plate. She was perpetually watching her figure. I ordered the steak and eggs, suddenly hungry. So, I said after the waiter left, you support Sean leaving his marriage for a younger woman whose father is dangling a business opportunity? Margaret's smile tightened. Morgan is a lovely girl from an excellent family. Very accomplished, very suitable. And let's be honest, Lorna, your marriage has been struggling for years. You've been so focused on your little foundation, traveling, to conferences, networking. A man like Sean needs attention, admiration. A man like Sean, I repeated slowly, needs his mother to defend his infidelity? A flash of anger crossed her face. I'm trying to make this easier for everyone. Sean is prepared to be very generous in the settlement. The penthouse, your foundation funding. How thoughtful, I interrupted. Did he happen to mention that Morgan's father is trying to acquire technology from Westbrook? Technology that Sean has been giving Morgan access to? Margaret's eyes widened slightly before she composed herself. That's ridiculous. Sean would never compromise his professional ethics. Yet he's certainly compromised his marital ethics. Marriage and business are different matters, she sniffed. Besides, the Blackwells are offering Sean a partnership worth millions. It's a step up from Westbrook, a company that's never fully appreciated his contributions. I almost laughed at the irony. If only she knew how much I'd advocated for Sean behind the scenes. How many times I'd recognized his brilliance when others couldn't see it. Margaret, let me be clear, I said as our food arrived. I have no intention of creating drama around this divorce. Sean is free to leave. But if he or the Blackwells think they can walk away with Westbrook's proprietary technology, they're mistaken. She studied me with narrowed eyes. You sound very confident for someone whose entire lifestyle is about to change. I cut into my steak, perfectly rare. Perhaps I have resources you're unaware of. After brunch, I decided to make a rare appearance at Westbrook Technologies. As the founder of the Hayes Foundation, I occasionally visited the company to discuss their Women in STEM initiatives, my only official connection to the business. The receptionist greeted me warmly. Mrs. Westbrook, it's been a while. Doctor. Westbrook is in a meeting, but I can let him know you're here. No need, I smiled. I'm actually here to see Felicia Chen in HR about our mentorship program. Felicia was one of the few people who knew my true identity. Officially the head of human resources, she was also my most trusted ally at Westbrook. As I waited for the elevator, I noticed Morgan Blackwell walking through the lobby, her confident stride and designer outfit making her stand out among the engineers and programmers. She was striking, tall with amber eyes and dark hair cut in a sharp bob. I could see why Sean had been attracted to her. Our eyes met briefly, and I saw confusion flicker across her face, trying to place me. Before she could approach, the elevator arrived. Perfect timing. Felicia was waiting in her office, tablet in hand. "Everything's prepared for tomorrow," she said once the door closed behind me. "The board members have all confirmed. Cooper has the security footage ready, and legal has prepared the cease and desist for Blackwell Investments." "Excellent," I replied, taking the tablet to review the documents. "And the Nexus project?" "We've implemented the security protocols you requested. All access has been restricted to the core team only. Dr. Westbrook's credentials have been—" She hesitated. "Modified." "Modified how?" "He still has access, but the system now creates duplicates of everything he views or downloads. And nothing he accesses can be transferred off-site." Felicia looked uncomfortable. "Lorna, are you sure about this? Once you reveal yourself tomorrow—" "It's time, Felicia. I've lived in the shadows for 15 years. I built this company alongside Sean, but he's never known it was me supporting his vision, fighting for his projects." I set down the tablet. "Besides, it's not just about our marriage anymore. The Blackwells are after our technology, and Sean is either complicit or being used." As we wrapped up our meeting, Felicia's phone buzzed. "Dr. Westbrook is looking for you," she said, reading the message. "Someone told him you're in the building." I smiled. "Perfect. Tell him I'm heading to the lobby." Sean found me waiting by the reception desk. His face showed a mixture of surprise and irritation. "Lorna, what are you doing here?" he asked, keeping his voice low. "I had a meeting about the Foundation's mentorship program," I replied calmly. "Why? Is there a problem with me being at your company?" His jaw tightened at my emphasis on your. "No, of course not. We have some important visitors today. I wish you'd called first." "Important visitors like Trevor Blackwell?" I asked innocently. Sean's eyes widened slightly. "How did you know that?" "Lucky guess. Is Morgan giving Daddy a tour of the facilities she's been learning so much about?" "This isn't the place," Sean hissed, glancing around at nearby employees. "No, it isn't," I agreed. "Just like our home wasn't the place for you to entertain her last month. But that didn't stop you." The color drained from Sean's face. "You knew?" "I know a lot of things, Sean, more than you might think." Before he could respond, the main doors opened and Trevor Blackwell himself walked in, flanked by Morgan and two men who were clearly security, rather than executives. "Sean, there you are," Trevor called out, his voice booming across the lobby. He was a large man with a commanding presence, expensive suit stretched across broad shoulders. "We were just discussing the demonstration for tomorrow. Who's this?" Sean seemed caught between worlds, visibly uncomfortable. "Trevor, this is Lorna, my wife," I finished, extending my hand with a warm smile. "Lorna Westbrook. How lovely to meet you, Mr. Blackwell." Trevor's handshake was firm, his smile practiced. "Ah, Mrs. Westbrook. Morgan has mentioned you." "Has she?" I turned to Morgan, whose composure faltered slightly. "How nice. I don't believe she's mentioned you in our conversations, but then again, we haven't really had the chance to chat properly." Morgan's eyes darted to Sean, who looked like he might be sick. "Father, we should continue to the demonstration lab. The team is waiting." Of course," Trevor agreed. "Sean, are you coming?" Sean hesitated, clearly torn between his professional obligations and the increasingly awkward personal situation. "Don't let me keep you," I said pleasantly. "I'm sure you have important things to discuss, like partnerships and transitions." I emphasized the last word, watching Sean flinch slightly. As they walked away, Trevor leaned close to Sean, asking something I couldn't hear. Sean nodded, looking back at me with a mixture of confusion and dread. Felicia appeared beside me. That was interesting, she murmured. It was just the opening act, I replied. Tomorrow is when the real show begins. That evening, when I returned to our penthouse, I found Sean packing in our bedroom. He looked up as I entered, his expression guarded. What was that about today? He demanded, shoving shirts into a suitcase. Showing up at Westbrook, embarrassing me in front of the Blackwells. I leaned against the doorframe. Embarrassing you? By introducing myself as your wife? A role I've held for 15 years? You know what I mean. He zipped the suitcase with unnecessary force. You've never just dropped by the office before, and you've never brought your mistress to our home before, yet here we are, breaking patterns. Sean froze. You said you knew. How long have you known about Morgan? Long enough. I crossed the room and sat on the edge of the bed. But what concerns me more than your affair is what you're sharing with her. Nexus project details? Really, Sean? His face hardened. That's a professional matter you wouldn't understand. The Nexus project needs Blackwell's investment to reach its full potential. The current board is too conservative, too risk-averse. Is that what Trevor told you? That the board is holding you back? I asked, knowing full well that I had been the one pushing the board to move faster on Nexus, not slower. It's what I've experienced for years. Sean's voice rose in frustration. Every breakthrough has to fight through layers of caution. Blackwell understands the vision. Blackwell wants to steal the technology, I countered. They're using Morgan to get to you, and you're falling for it because she flatters your ego. Both. Professionally and personally. He laughed bitterly. That's rich, coming from someone who's never worked in tech. Your foundation is admirable, Lorna, but don't pretend you understand what's happening at Westbrook. You have no idea what I've built there. The irony was almost painful. What you've built, I repeated softly. Yes, what I've built. 15 years of my life, my ideas, my leadership. And now I have a chance to take it further with partners who appreciate my value. He grabbed his suitcase. I'm staying at a hotel tonight. My lawyer will contact yours tomorrow. As he headed for the door, I called after him. The board meeting's at 9 tomorrow. Don't be late. He paused, confused. What does the board meeting have to do with you? I smiled. More than you might think. After Sean left, I poured myself a glass of wine and stepped out onto our terrace. The San Francisco skyline glittered beneath me, a tapestry of lights against the darkness. 15 years of marriage, ending. Not with a whimper, but with a calculated betrayal. My phone rang. My father. I heard there's a special board meeting tomorrow, he said without preamble. At 75, Richard Hayes had officially retired but kept his finger on the pulse of all his investments. News travels fast, I remarked. Cooper called me. Said you're planning to reveal yourself as L.H. Hayes. His voice carried a rare note of concern. Are you sure about this, Lorna? Once you step out of the shadows? I know the risks, I interrupted. But it's time. Sean's been sharing proprietary information with the Blackwells. They're after Nexus. There was a long pause. And this has nothing to do with his affair? I sighed. Would it matter if it did? The company is at risk either way. It matters to me, my father said quietly. You've built something remarkable at Westbrook, Lorna. Not just the technology, but your leadership. You've proven yourself 20 times over. I don't want to see that overshadowed by personal drama. It won't be, I promised. This isn't about revenge. It's about protecting what I've built. Another pause. Do you need me there tomorrow? The offer touched me. For 15 years, my father had respected my desire to operate independently, to prove myself without his shadow looming over me. No, I said finally. This is something I need to do myself. But thank you for offering. After we hung up, I called Felicia to confirm the final details for tomorrow. Then Cooper, to review security measures. We've identified 3 servers that were accessed using Dr. Westbrook's credentials during off hours, Cooper reported. The data transfers were substantial, primarily Nexus interface protocols and neural mapping algorithms. Can we prove Morgan Blackwell was involved? Building security logs show her badge being used to enter Dr. Westbrook's office during those transfers, and we have surveillance footage of them accessing the servers together from his computer. I closed my eyes. Part of me had still hoped Sean was being manipulated, not actively participating. Send everything to legal, I instructed. And Cooper, thank you for your discretion throughout this. The doorbell rang just as I was preparing for bed. Checking the security camera, I was surprised to see Chuck Peterson, Westbrook's chief financial officer and one of the few board members who consistently supported Sean's more ambitious proposals. Chuck, I said, opening the door. It's almost midnight. Is everything all right? Chuck looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight from foot to foot. In his mid-50s with salt and pepper hair and perpetually worried eyes, he had always struck me as someone more comfortable with spreadsheets than confrontation. I'm sorry to disturb you, Lorna. I need to talk to you about something urgent. He glanced down the hallway nervously. May I come in? I stepped aside, curious. In 15 years, Chuck had never visited our home outside of company functions. Sean called me. He began once we were seated in the living room. He's concerned about you. Said you might try to interfere with the Blackwell partnership. So that's why he was here. Did Sean mention that this partnership involves him divorcing me for Trevor Blackwell's daughter? Or that they've been accessing confidential Nexus data after hours? Chuck winced. Look, I'm not here to get involved in your personal matters, but professionally speaking, the Blackwell investment could be transformative for Westbrook. The board meeting tomorrow is crucial. And Sean sent you to… What? Convince me to stay away? I asked, genuinely curious about his role in this. Chuck fidgeted with his wedding ring. Not exactly. He's worried you might contact L.H. Hayes before the meeting. Try to block the partnership. I raised an eyebrow. Contact L.H. Hayes? The reclusive majority shareholder who never shows up in person? Why would I have that kind of access? Sean mentioned you've done foundation work with some board members, that you might have connections. Chuck looked deeply uncomfortable. Now, he thinks you might try to influence the vote out of spite. Spite? I repeated. Is that what he calls protecting the company's intellectual property from corporate espionage? Chuck's eyes widened. What are you talking about? I walked to my home office and returned with a tablet. These are security logs showing unauthorized data transfers from the Nexus servers. These are building access records showing Morgan Blackwell entering secure areas using Sean's credentials. And this, I swiped to the last file, is a preliminary term sheet from Blackwell Investments outlining their plans to acquire Westbrook's Neural Interface division once they have a working prototype. Chuck stared at the documents, his financial mind quickly processing the implications. Where did you get these? Let's just say I have friends in the company who are concerned about its future. I took back the tablet. The board meeting tomorrow isn't about approving a partnership, Chuck. It's about stopping a theft. He sat back, clearly shaken. Does Ms. Hayes know about this? I smiled slightly. Oh, she's fully aware. In fact, she'll be attending the meeting personally. Chuck's head snapped up. What? But she never… Times change, I interrupted. Some circumstances require a more direct approach. As I showed Chuck to the door, he paused. Lorna, for what it's worth, I'm sorry about you and Sean. Whatever's happening with the company, 15 years of marriage deserves better. His unexpected kindness caught me off guard. Thank you, Chuck. I appreciate that. After he left, I returned to the terrace, gazing out at the city. Tomorrow, everything would change. My carefully constructed dual identity would collapse. The power dynamics at Westbrook, and in my personal life, would shift irrevocably. I felt a strange calm settle over me. For 15 years, I had operated in the shadows, building a company while pretending to be just a supportive wife. Tomorrow, I would step into the light and reclaim both my company and my identity. Sean had no idea what was coming. Neither did Morgan or Trevor Blackwell. They thought they were orchestrating a simple corporate takeover and marital trade-up. Instead, they were about to meet the real L.H. Hayes. I woke at 5 a.m. after barely sleeping. Today wasn't just about confronting Sean or stopping the Blackwells. Today I would step out from behind the curtain I'd maintained for 15 years, revealing myself as the architect of Westbrook's success. My phone chimed with a text from Felicia. Security protocols in place. Boardroom secured. Files ready. Blackwells arrived at Palmer Hotel last night, so Trevor Blackwell had stayed in town for the board meeting. Perfect. I wanted him present for what was about to unfold. I took extra care with my appearance, choosing a steel gray suit that I'd worn to several Hayes Investment Board meetings where I had spoken with my own voice, using my own name, my battle armor. As I fastened my mother's pearls around my neck, a graduation gift from before she passed, I studied my reflection. At 43, I had earned every line on my face, every strand of silver beginning to thread through my chestnut hair. I no longer resembled the naive young woman who had fallen for Sean Westbrook's charm and vision. Today, I would show everyone, who I had become. My father called as I was leaving the penthouse. "It's not too late to change your mind," he said, concern evident in his voice. "I've been changing my mind for 15 years," I replied. "Always holding back, always concealing my true self and my true role. I'm done with that." "And after today? Have you thought about what comes next?" I paused at the door, considering. Honestly, no, one battle at a time. I arrived at Westbrook headquarters at 7:30 a.m., nearly 90 minutes before the scheduled meeting. The building was quiet, with only early arriving engineers and the cleaning staff present. Cooper met me in the lobby, keycard ready. "Everything's prepared, Ms. Hayes," he said, using my professional name for perhaps the last time it would be a secret. "The special security team is in place, and we've restricted access to the executive floor." "And our guests?" Mr. Blackwell's team has requested building access for a pre-meeting tour. I've arranged for them to be escorted directly to the boardroom. We rode the elevator to the executive floor in silence. When the doors opened, Felicia was waiting with a tablet and a small case. "The board members have all confirmed attendance," she reported as we walked toward the boardroom. "Dr. Westbrook hasn't arrived yet, but he's confirmed as well." Inside the boardroom, everything was meticulously arranged. At the head of the table, where L.H. Hayes would typically join via secure video call, a chair waited. My chair. Screens. Around the room were ready to display the evidence we had gathered. Felicia handed me the case. Inside was a small device, a neural interface prototype, the most advanced version of the technology the Blackwells were trying to acquire. "Is it ready?" I asked, lifting it carefully. "Fully functional," she confirmed. "The team worked through the night. It's not pretty, but it works." I smiled. "It doesn't need to be pretty. It just needs to prove a point." Cooper checked his watch. "Board members will start arriving in 20 minutes. Where do you want to be when they come in?" I considered for a moment. "I'll wait in the CEO's office. Bring them all in, get them settled. When everyone's present, including the Blackwells, send me a text. I want to make an entrance they won't forget." At precisely 9 a.m., my phone buzzed with Felicia's message. "All present. Blackwell's seated next to Sean. Ready when you are." I took a deep breath and stepped out of the CEO's office, walking the short distance to the boardroom. Through the glass walls, I could see them all. The 12 board members, Sean at his usual place near the head of the table, and the Blackwells, father and daughter, looking confident and slightly smug. The room fell silent as I entered. Sean's face registered confusion, then alarm. Lorna? What are you doing here? He half rose from his seat. This is a closed board meeting. I'm well aware of what this meeting is, Sean, I replied calmly, walking to the head of the table. The chair, reserved for L.H. Hayes. Charles Bennett, the board chairman, cleared his throat awkwardly. Mrs. Westbrook, I'm afraid your husband is correct. This meeting is for board members only, and we're expecting a call from Ms. Hayes momentarily. No call today, Charles, I said, setting down my portfolio. I thought it was time we met in person. A murmur ran through the room. Sean's confusion deepened. What are you talking about? You can't just interrupt a board meeting. Security won't be removing me, I finished for him. Isn't that right, Cooper? Cooper, standing by the door, nodded. That's correct, Ms. Hayes. The room went completely still. I could almost hear the mental gears turning as everyone processed what they'd just heard. Trevor Blackwell recovered first, his businessman's instincts kicking in. I'm sorry, did he just call you Ms. Hayes? As in L.H. Hayes? I smiled, looking directly at Sean as I answered. That's correct, Mr. Blackwell. Lorna Hayes Westbrook, founder and majority shareholder of Westbrook Technologies. I believe you were hoping to acquire some of my company's intellectual property today? Sean's face had gone completely white. This is absurd, he whispered, but the uncertainty in his voice betrayed him. You can't be what, Sean? The owner of the company you thought you were building? The woman who approved every project, every promotion, every expansion you've taken credit for over the past 15 years? I kept my voice level, though my heart was pounding. I assure you, I am exactly who I say I am. Morgan Blackwell leaned over to whisper something to her father, who waved her off, his eyes never leaving me. Charles, I addressed the chairman, would you be kind enough to verify my identity for the board? You've been conducting video meetings with me for over a decade. Charles Bennett, a distinguished man in his 60s who had been on the board since the beginning, nodded slowly. The voice is unmistakable, even without the usual distortion, and now that I see you, he looked around the table. Ladies and gentlemen, this is indeed L.H. Hayes. Sean pushed back from the table violently, his chair nearly toppling. This is insane. You're a philanthropist. You run a foundation. You've never worked a day in tech. Actually, Chuck Peterson interjected quietly, she has a double major in business and computer science from Berkeley, class of 2010, graduated summa cum laude. Sean's head whipped toward his supposed ally. You knew? Chuck shook his head. Not until last night. And even then, I didn't fully believe it until this moment. I remained standing at the head of the table, command center of the company I had built. I think it's time we discuss the real purpose of this meeting. It's not, as some of you were led to believe, about a potential partnership with Blackwell Investments. I nodded to Felicia, who activated the screens around the room. It's about the attempted theft of Westbrook's proprietary neural interface technology. The screens filled with data logs, security footage, and email exchanges. A video began to play, showing Sean and Morgan accessing secure servers after hours. For the past 6 months, I continued, Dr. Westbrook has been sharing confidential information about the Nexus project with Morgan Blackwell, whose father has made several previous attempts to acquire our neural interface division. Trevor Blackwell's face darkened. These are serious allegations, Ms. Hayes, or Mrs. Westbrook, whatever you prefer to be called. Do you have any idea who you're accusing? I know exactly who I'm accusing, Mr. Blackwell. Just as I know that your daughter's relationship with my husband conveniently began right after your third failed attempt to buy our technology. Morgan stood up abruptly. That's a lie. Sean and I have been meeting in our home when you thought I was traveling for my foundation. I finished for her. I have the security footage from our penthouse as well, if you'd like me to share it with the board. Sean looked destroyed, caught between his professional misconduct and personal betrayal. Lorna, he said, his voice barely audible. Why? 15 years. Why the deception? I finally took my seat at the head of the table, the position that had always been mine. That, I said quietly, is a question you can ask yourself, Sean. You're the one who's been conspiring to steal from your own company, from your own wife. Charles Bennett cleared his throat, breaking the tense silence that had fallen over the boardroom. I believe we should take a 15-minute recess, he announced, looking around at the stunned faces. This situation requires some processing. Nobody argued. One by one, the board members filed out, casting curious glances between Sean and me. Cooper stationed security personnel at the door to ensure confidentiality. The Blackwells huddled in the corner, Trevor speaking urgently into his phone while Morgan stared daggers at me. Sean remained frozen in his chair, staring at the evidence displayed on the screens. The footage of him and Morgan entering the secure server room, the data logs showing file transfers, the emails discussing how to extract maximum value from the Nexus project once acquisition is complete. When everyone else had stepped out, leaving just the two of us in the boardroom, he finally looked up. 15 years, he repeated. Our entire marriage was a lie. I shook my head. Not the marriage, Sean. Just my professional identity. Just? He laughed bitterly. You've been secretly controlling my career, making decisions about my work, all while pretending to be just my supportive wife. What would you call that if not a lie? I gazed out the window at the San Francisco skyline, the same view we'd enjoyed from our first tiny apartment, though from a much higher vantage point now. I'd call it believing in you, I said quietly. My mind drifted back to our early days at Berkeley. The spring picnic on Memorial Glade where Sean had first sketched his vision for neural interface technology on a paper napkin, his eyes bright with excitement. Imagine it, Lorna, he'd said, drawing intricate diagrams while I sipped wine and watched his hands move. Direct communication between the human brain and computers, not just for gaming or convenience, but for medical applications, helping paralyzed patients regain mobility, restoring sight to the blind. It could change everything. His passion had been infectious. That night, I'd stayed up researching neural pathways and computer interfaces, trying to understand his vision. By morning, I'd drafted a preliminary business plan. When I presented it to him over coffee, his face had lit up with surprise and appreciation. This is incredible, he'd said, flipping through my notes. You really understand what I'm trying to do. Of course I do, I'd replied. I believe in you, Sean, and I believe in this technology. Those words had been completely true. I had believed in him, in his brilliance and vision. That belief had never wavered, even as our marriage began to crumble. I remembered our graduation day, standing in the Berkeley Campanile, looking out over the bay. Sean had pulled out a small velvet box containing a modest diamond ring, all he could afford, on his student budget. I know your family doesn't approve, he'd said nervously. I know they think I'm not good enough, but I promise you, Lorna, someday I'll build something amazing. Someday I'll make them see your faith in me wasn't misplaced. I'd kissed him then, tears in my eyes, not for the ring, but for the earnest promise behind it. The next day, I had accepted my father's proposal to invest in Westbrook Technologies. Not because I doubted Sean could succeed on his own, but because I wanted to help make his vision a reality faster. Do you remember our first apartment? I asked, breaking the silence in the boardroom. Sean looked up, startled by the question. What? On Shattuck Avenue, the one with the broken heater and the upstairs neighbor who practiced saxophone at midnight. A flicker of something, nostalgia perhaps, or confusion at the change of subject, crossed his face. Of course I remember. We could barely afford the rent. You were so excited when Westbrook offered you that first position. Research scientist, level 2. The salary seemed enormous to us then. $65,000 a year, he said softly. We thought we were rich. I smiled at the memory. We celebrated at that little Italian place on College Avenue. Split a bottle of champagne we couldn't afford. You wore that blue dress, he said, the memory clearly coming into focus for him. You said it. Was your lucky interview dress, I nodded. And 3 months later, you came home waving a printout of your first successful neural interface test. You were so excited you tripped over that hideous thrift store coffee table and spilled wine all over the results. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. You helped me recreate the entire report from memory. Stayed up all night. Because I believed in the work, I said. I always did, Sean. From the very beginning. His eyes hardened again. Enough to secretly buy the company I worked for? Enough to invest in your vision when no one else would, I corrected. Westbrook was going under when you joined. They had the basic technology, but no direction. No real understanding of the potential. You gave them that. And your money gave you control, he said bitterly. My money kept the company alive long enough for your ideas to take root. I leaned forward. Did you never wonder why your proposals were approved when others weren't? Why the board supported your vision when it seemed financially risky? It was me, Sean. I made sure you had the resources and support to create what you saw in your mind. Remember the night you made the breakthrough on the neural mapping algorithm? I asked. Sean's eyes drifted to the window. That night had been one of our last truly happy moments together. It had been raining, a rare thunderstorm in San Francisco. Sean had been working for weeks on a seemingly insurmountable problem with the neural interface's ability to distinguish between intentional thought commands and background neural activity. He'd come home drenched, but with a look of triumph I hadn't seen in months. I solved it, he'd announced, shaking rain from his hair like an excited puppy. Lorna, I finally solved it. He'd pulled me to his home office, opening his laptop to show me the elegant solution he'd devised. A filtering algorithm that isolated command signals from neural noise with unprecedented accuracy. I had understood immediately what it meant. This is it, I'd said, studying the code. This is the missing piece. He'd looked at me with surprise. You really do understand it, don't you? Not just the business implications, but the actual technology. Of course I do, I'd replied, touched by his revelation. I've been following your work for years. Did you think I was just nodding along? He'd kissed me then, with a passion that had been missing from our marriage for months. We'd made love on the office floor, surrounded by printouts and diagrams, celebrating a breakthrough that would eventually become the foundation of the Nexus project. The next day, as L.H. Hayes, I had allocated an additional $10 million to Sean's research division. That was the last time, I said softly, returning to the present. The last time you shared your work with me, your excitement. After that, you started staying later at the office. Coming home distracted, keeping your breakthroughs to yourself. Sean stared at his hands. I thought you wouldn't understand, that you were too busy with your foundation. I understood everything, I replied. Every line of code, every research, paper, every quarterly report. I was there for all of it, Sean, just not in the way you thought. The boardroom door opened as Charles Bennett led the directors back in. The 15-minute recess had stretched to 20, likely filled with shocked conversations in the hallway about the company's true ownership. The Blackwells returned as well, though their demeanor had changed dramatically. Trevor's confident swagger was replaced by a wary calculation, while Morgan's hostility had hardened into something colder, more controlled. Before we continue, Charles announced once everyone was seated, I've consulted with our legal counsel. The evidence Ms. Hayes, Mrs. Westbrook, has presented regarding unauthorized data access is concerning enough that we've notified the FBI's cyber division. Trevor Blackwell shot to his feet. This is outrageous. You have no proof that we have extensive proof, Mr. Blackwell, I interrupted calmly. Server logs, access records, surveillance footage, and file transfer data. Your daughter used Dr. Westbrook's security credentials to access proprietary information after hours. Information that subsequently appeared in your acquisition proposal. Morgan slammed her hand on the table. You can't prove intent. Sean and I were working on improvements to the interface. He wanted my expertise. Your expertise? I raised an eyebrow. According to your CV, you specialize in consumer applications for existing neural interfaces. The Nexus project involves core architecture and neural mapping algorithms well outside your area of expertise. Sean finally spoke up. The board authorized bringing in outside consultants. There was nothing improper about Morgan reviewing the technology. The board authorized no such thing, Charles corrected. And even if we had, that wouldn't extend to after-hours access to secure servers containing patent-pending technology. Enough. Trevor Blackwell's voice cut through the tension. This is clearly a personal dispute that's being dressed up as a corporate matter. Mrs. Westbrook discovered her husband's affair and is now using her apparent position in the company to exact revenge. I smiled thinly. Is that your assessment, Mr. Blackwell? That I've orchestrated this elaborate scenario, including falsifying hundreds of server logs and hours of surveillance footage, because I'm a jealous wife? Before he could respond, the boardroom door opened again. My heart lifted as I saw who entered. Fiona Chen, Felicia's sister and one of the top intellectual property attorneys in Silicon Valley, strode in with the confidence of someone used to commanding rooms much more intimidating than this one. Sorry I'm late, she announced, setting her briefcase on the table. Traffic on the Bay Bridge was terrible. Behind her came Johnny Rivera, Westbrook's chief technology officer and the original architect of the neural interface system that Sean had later refined and expanded. He nodded to me with a small smile, taking a seat nearby. Ms. Chen, Mr. Rivera, Charles acknowledged. I wasn't aware you would be joining us. I invited them, I said. Fiona has been handling Westbrook's intellectual property matters since the beginning, though most of you know her only through video conferences. And Johnny was instrumental in creating the original technology that eventually became the Nexus project. Johnny spread his hands. When Ms. Hayes called last night and explained what was happening, I caught the first flight from our Boston lab. You knew? Sean asked, betrayal evident in his voice. You knew she was secretly controlling the company? Johnny looked uncomfortable. I knew she was the majority investor, yes. I was part of the original team when Hayes Investments saved Westbrook from bankruptcy. But the secretly controlling part? No. L.H. Hayes always seemed genuinely interested in advancing the technology, not controlling it. Fiona opened her briefcase, extracting several folders. I've prepared cease and desist orders for Blackwell Investments, as well as preliminary documentation for a federal lawsuit alleging corporate espionage, theft of trade secrets, and violation of the Economic Espionage Act. Trevor Blackwell's face darkened. This is absurd. You have nothing concrete linking our firm to any alleged data theft. Actually, said a new voice from the doorway, we have quite a bit. Cooper entered with an elegant, silver-haired woman. I recognized as Margaret Kelly, my father's longtime legal counsel and trusted advisor. Behind her was a tall, distinguished man in his 50s, Agent Evans from the FBI's Cyber Division. Director Kelly, Charles Bennett said, standing in surprise. I wasn't aware Hayes Investments would be represented today. Margaret smiled coolly. Richard sends his regards. He thought it prudent to have someone present who's been involved with Westbrook since the initial investment. And you are? Charles asked the FBI agent. Special Agent Daniel Evans, FBI Cyber Division, he replied, showing his credentials. We've been monitoring unusual data transfer patterns from Westbrook's secure servers for several weeks as part of an ongoing investigation into corporate espionage targeting multiple tech firms in the area. Sean paled visibly. An investigation, but The investigation was initiated based on intelligence that foreign entities were attempting to acquire American neural interface technology through various channels, Agent Evans explained. Blackwell. Investments appeared on our radar when they began aggressively pursuing acquisitions in this space, shortly after meetings with representatives from several foreign investment groups. Trevor Blackwell's composure finally cracked. This is a setup. You can't possibly— Mr. Blackwell, Agent Evans interrupted. I'd advise you to save your statements for a more formal setting. We have a warrant to search Blackwell Investments servers and secure any data related to Westbrook's proprietary technology. As Trevor and Morgan Blackwell were escorted from the boardroom by FBI agents for preliminary questioning, a strange calm settled over the space. Sean sat motionless, staring at the gathering of people who had apparently known more about his professional life than he had. How many people knew? He asked quietly. How many people were in on this secret? Not as many as you might think, I replied. Felicia knew from the beginning. She was my roommate at Berkeley before becoming Westbrook's HR director. Johnny knew I was an investor, but not the extent of my involvement. Fiona handled the legal structure that allowed me to remain anonymous. And my father has known Margaret since childhood, I continued, nodding toward the Hayes Investments director. She helped create the investment vehicle that allowed me to maintain control while keeping my identity private. But why? Sean asked, his voice hollow. Why go to such lengths to hide who you really were? Margaret stepped forward. If I may, Lorna? When I nodded, she addressed Sean directly. When Richard Hayes' daughter announced she wanted to marry a brilliant but unproven engineer who had explicitly stated he wanted to succeed without family connections or advantages, we faced a dilemma. Richard could have forbidden the marriage, she continued. He could have insisted Lorna sign a prenuptial agreement that would have revealed her true financial status. Or he could respect her wish to support your ambition while allowing you the independence you clearly valued. Sean shook, his head in disbelief. So this elaborate deception was for my benefit? To protect my pride? Partially, I admitted, but also because I wanted to prove something to myself, that I could build something significant without relying on the Hayes name, that I could be judged on my business decisions rather than my family connections. And you've done that in spades, Margaret said with quiet pride. Richard has said many times that your leadership of Westbrook has exceeded even his expectations. The company's valuation has increased 40-fold under your guidance. Johnny nodded. When I was considering leaving to start my own company 3 years ago, it was L.H. Hayes who convinced me to stay, not with money, but with a clear vision for where neural interface technology could go. I didn't know that was you, Lorna, but I trusted your judgment. We all did. Charles Bennett cleared his throat. I think I speak for the entire board when I say we're still processing these revelations. But one thing is clear. Westbrook Technologies has been well led, and its intellectual property has been fiercely protected. For that, we owe you our gratitude, regardless of how unusual the circumstances. I looked around the room at the faces of people who had, knowingly or not, formed my professional support system over the years. Charles with his steady leadership, Johnny with his technical brilliance, Fiona with her legal acumen, Cooper with his unwavering loyalty, Felicia with her friendship and discretion, and even Margaret, representing my father's silent faith in my abilities. For 15 years, I had built this network, this foundation of trust and competence that allowed Westbrook to thrive. And now, as my personal life crumbled, that professional foundation remained solid. My eyes finally returned to Sean, sitting alone at the table, all his plans and deceptions exposed. The board needs to discuss next steps, I said, rising from my seat. Sean, I think it would be best if you waited in your office until we've reached some decisions. By mid-afternoon, the news had broken. Someone in the building, perhaps one of the board members or someone from the Blackwell team, had leaked the morning's dramatic events to the press. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing with notifications as headlines flashed across technology news sites. Tech World, stunned. Westbrook Technology's true owner revealed. Corporate espionage, scandal rocks Silicon Valley. LH, Hayes, unmasked, the woman. Behind the neural tech revolution. Felicia rushed into the temporary office I'd set up in the executive suite, her expression tense. The lobby is swarming with reporters. Security is keeping them contained, but they're calling everyone they can reach at the company. Social media is exploding. I nodded, unsurprised. What's the internal response? Shock, mostly. The engineers are particularly thrown. Many of them have presented directly to LH Hayes on video calls without knowing it was you. She hesitated. There's also some anger, particularly among the executives who reported to Sean. They feel deceived. Understandable, I acknowledged. We need to get ahead of this. Schedule an all-hands meeting for tomorrow morning, and have PR prepare a statement. Factual, not emotional. Focus on the company's achievements and future direction, not the personal elements. Already working on it, Felicia confirmed. But there's something else. Sean is refusing to leave the building. He's locked himself in his office and is demanding to speak with you alone. I sighed, feeling the weight of the day pressing down on me. What did the board decide? Administrative leave, pending a full investigation of his involvement with the Blackwells. They're stopping short of termination given his technical contributions to the company, but they've suspended his access to all Nexus project materials. She handed me a tablet displaying the board's formal resolution. Charles asked me to give you this. They've also officially acknowledged you as CEO, effective immediately. The title felt strange, a position I had effectively held for years, but never claimed publicly. And the Blackwells? The FBI took Trevor and Morgan in for questioning. They were released on their own recognizance, but they've been ordered not to leave the state. Blackwell Investments servers are being imaged as we speak. I nodded, taking it all in. I need 30 minutes to review the board's resolution and prepare the company announcement. Then I'll deal with Sean. Felicia hesitated at the door. Lorna, are you okay? This is a lot, even for you. For the first time since the morning's confrontation, I felt my composure waver. Ask me tomorrow, I said with a weak smile. Right now, I'm just trying to keep the company stable. After she left, I checked my personal phone. 12 missed calls from my father, 5 from Margaret, and 1 text message from Sean. You've destroyed everything we built. Was it worth it? The irony was almost painful. When I finally made my way to Sean's office, Cooper was stationed outside, along with 2 security personnel. He's been making calls for the past hour, Cooper reported. We've monitored them as directed by legal, mostly to his attorney, but also to several Westbrook executives and at least 1 board member. Building alliances already, I noted. Or trying to. Should I come in with you? Cooper asked, concern evident in his voice. I shook my head. This needs to be private, but stay close. Sean's office was a reflection of his professional persona, meticulously organized with awards and patents displayed prominently on the walls. He sat behind his desk, jacket off, tie loosened, looking like a man under siege. Come to gloat? He asked as I closed the door behind me. No, I replied simply. I came because you asked to see me. He laughed bitterly. Asked? I asked like a prisoner asks for a hearing. This is my company too, Lorna. I built this technology. I made Westbrook what it is today. You did, I agreed, taking a seat across from him. Your contributions to the neural interface technology are foundational. No one is disputing that. Just my ethics, my loyalty, and my judgment, right? He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it made my chest ache despite everything. Do you have any idea what you've done? The Blackwell partnership would have accelerated Nexus development by years. Their investment network was interested in stealing our technology, not developing it. I interrupted. The FBI has been tracking their connections to foreign entities trying to acquire American neural interface capabilities. This wasn't just about corporate competition, Sean. There are national security implications. He faltered slightly, but quickly recovered. Even if that's true, which I doubt, you didn't have to blow up our marriage and humiliate me in front of the entire board to address it. You could have come to me privately. Like you came to me about Morgan? I asked quietly. He had the grace to look away. That was personal. Was it? Because from where I'm sitting, your personal and professional betrayals are completely intertwined. You shared our company's most valuable intellectual property with a woman you were sleeping with, whose father was actively trying to acquire that same technology. It wasn't like that, he insisted. Morgan understands the technology in ways you never could. She saw potential applications that— Save it, Sean. I cut him off. The logs don't lie. The access patterns, the data transfers, the timing, it all aligns perfectly with Blackwell's acquisition strategy. Whether you were a willing participant or just being used doesn't actually matter to the FBI. His face paled. Are they— I under investigation too? Yes, I said simply. Corporate espionage is a federal crime. So is theft of trade secrets. Sean slumped in his chair, the reality of his situation finally sinking in. I could go to prison, he murmured, more to himself than to me. It's possible, I acknowledged, though your cooperation would likely be viewed favorably by prosecutors. Cooperation? He looked up, eyes narrowing. You mean turning on Morgan and Trevor? I mean telling the truth about what happened, what you shared, what you knew about their intentions when the relationship began. He was silent for a long moment, staring out the window at the San Francisco skyline, the view he'd worked so hard to earn, the success he'd been willing to betray our marriage for. And what happens to me at Westbrook? I assume you're firing me? There was resignation in his voice now. That's not my decision alone, I said. The board has placed you on administrative leave pending the investigation. Your technical contributions to Nexus are significant, no one disputes that. But your actions have violated company policy at a minimum and federal law at worst. Sean stood suddenly, pacing the length of his office. This is insane. Yesterday I was the COO of a leading tech company on the verge of a major partnership. Today, I'm under federal investigation and my wife turns out to be my boss. My entire life is imploding, and you sit there talking about company policy like we're discussing a late expense report. What would you prefer, Sean? I asked, maintaining my composure. Should I scream? Throw things? Would that make this easier for you to process? It would make you seem human, he shot back. 15 years, Lorna. 15 years of marriage, and I never really knew you. Never knew what you were capable of. The accusation stung more than I wanted to admit. And I never knew you were capable of betraying everything we built together, personally and professionally, for a partnership offer and a younger woman. My phone buzzed with a text from Felicia. CNN and Bloomberg requesting interviews. Board chairman calling for crisis management meeting in 20 minutes. I stood, our conversation clearly at an impasse. I have to go. Legal will be contacting you about next steps. In the meantime, I suggest you call your attorney. Your actual attorney, not Trevor Blackwell's legal team. As I reached the door, Sean called after me. Was any of it real, Lorna? Our marriage? Or was I just another acquisition for the Hayes portfolio? I paused, my hand on the doorknob. I loved you, Sean. Enough to invest in your vision when no one else would. Enough to hide my family connections because I knew how important it was for you to succeed on your own. Enough to build a company around your brilliant mind. I turned to look at him one last time. The question isn't whether my love was real. It's whether yours was ever about me at all, or just what I could provide for you. I left him standing there, surrounded by the accolades of a career I had helped build, facing the consequences of betrayals he had never expected to be discovered. By evening, the story had exploded beyond the tech world and into mainstream media. My face was everywhere, pulled from foundation event photos, company parties, and even my Berkeley graduation pictures. 15 years of carefully maintained privacy, shattered in less than 12 hours. The remarkable story of Lorna Hayes. Westbrook, the secret power behind one of Silicon Valley's most innovative companies, a CNN anchor was saying as I watched from my temporary office. Sources close to Westbrook Technologies confirm that Mrs. Westbrook has been operating under the pseudonym L.H. Hayes while serving as the company's majority shareholder and de facto leader. I muted the television as Felicia entered with a stack of printouts. "The first wave of press coverage," she said, dropping them on the desk. "It's intense." Scanning the headlines, I could see the various angles emerging. The Silicon Valley Shadow CEO, how Lorna Hayes built a tech empire. In secret, tech's newest power woman emerges from the shadows, corporate deception or brilliant strategy. The ethics of L.H. Hayes' double life. Hayes dynasty continues. Billionaire Richard Hayes' daughter reveals tech leadership role. Then there were the more sensational tabloid approaches. Tech wife's revenge. Husband's affair leads to shocking. Corporate reveal. Marriage, money, and betrayal in Silicon Valley. I pushed the papers away, suddenly exhausted. "What's the board saying?" "They're divided," Felicia reported. "Some are concerned about investor confidence given the sudden leadership change and the FBI investigation. Others see a PR opportunity. The brilliant woman behind Westbrook's success finally taking her rightful place as the public face of the company. And the employees? Mixed reactions there, too. The engineering teams are mostly concerned about project continuity, especially Nexus. Middle management is nervous about restructuring. The younger staff thinks it's, quote, badass that you've been secretly running things. I almost smiled at that. And Nexus? That's the good news. Johnny has taken charge of the project team and assured them that development will continue as planned. The prototype demonstration scheduled for next month is still on track. My phone rang. My father calling for the 13th time today. I finally answered. "I'm sending the jet," he said without preamble. "Come home, Lorna. You need a secure location away from the press while this settles." "I can't leave now," I replied. "The company needs stability." "The company has survived. 15 years of you leading from behind the scenes. It can manage a few days while you regroup." His voice softened slightly. "This isn't just about Westbrook anymore. The press is digging into everything. Your marriage, the Hayes family holdings, the foundation. Margaret is fielding calls from financial reporters asking about the full extent of your control over other Hayes investments." I closed my eyes, feeling the situation spiraling beyond my control. "I'll think about it." "The jet will be ready either way," he said before hanging up. Felicia looked at me with concern. "He's not wrong, you know. Your condo is probably surrounded by reporters by now." "Probably," I agreed. "But running away will just make it look like I have something to hide." "Taking a strategic pause isn't running away," she countered. "Besides, you haven't slept in over 36 hours. As if to emphasize her point, my phone chimed with an alert. Sean had just given an exclusive interview to a major tech publication, promising to tell his side of the story. I didn't have to wait long to discover what his side entailed. Within an hour, Sean's interview was published online, and it was every bit as damaging as I had feared. "My wife's deception goes far beyond keeping her wealth a secret," the article quoted him saying. "She actively manipulated my career, making decisions about my work and projects while pretending to be an uninvolved third party. Imagine discovering that your spouse has been secretly pulling strings in your professional life for 15 years, controlling which of your ideas receive funding, which get shelved." I read the piece twice, watching as Sean skillfully repositioned himself from betrayer to victim, a brilliant innovator whose trust had been violated by a controlling heiress playing corporate puppet master. The alleged corporate espionage is a smokescreen, he claimed in the interview. The real story here is about control and deception in both a marriage and a company. The timing of these revelations conveniently coincided with my request for divorce. Draw your own conclusions about motivation. Felicia read over my shoulder, her expression darkening. This is character assassination. He's trying to salvage his reputation by destroying yours. It's a smart play, I admitted, professional respect momentarily overriding my personal hurt. He's redirecting attention from his actions with the Blackwells to my deception about my role at Westbrook. In crisis management terms, it's textbook. But it's manipulative and false, Felicia argued. You never blocked his ideas or controlled his work. If anything, you championed his vision when others didn't see it. The truth is more nuanced than either narrative, I said, setting down the tablet. But nuance doesn't make for viral headlines. My phone lit up with a text from Charles Bennett. Emergency board call in 30 minutes. Sean's interview creating serious concerns among key investors. Then another message, this one from Cooper. Security alert at your condo. Press has surrounded the building. Not safe to return there tonight. And finally, from my father, Jet standing by. Car waiting in the die. Secure garage. The walls were closing in. My carefully constructed life, both personal and professional, was crumbling around me. And for the first time in my adult life, I wasn't sure how to proceed. The emergency board call was just as difficult as I had anticipated. Several members expressed concerns about the company's stability and public image. The market doesn't like surprises, said Janet Winters, one of our more conservative directors. And it certainly doesn't like soap opera drama at the executive level. With all due respect, Charles countered, the issue here isn't Mrs. Westbrook's leadership, which has been exemplary, if unconventional in its structure. The issue is corporate espionage and the breach of confidentiality regarding our most valuable intellectual property. The public doesn't see it that way, Janet insisted. They see marital drama and secret identities. Our stock is already down 7% in after-hours trading, which is why we need to focus on stabilizing the company's image immediately, said Chuck Peterson. Sean's interview has shifted the narrative in a dangerous direction. We should consider a temporary leadership change, suggested another director. Perhaps Charles could step in as acting CEO while this situation resolves. I had expected this, but it still stung. After 15 years of guiding the company, albeit from the shadows, my leadership was being questioned the moment I stepped into the light. If I may, I interjected, my voice steadier than I felt. I understand the concerns about public perception and market response, but installing temporary leadership now would only reinforce the narrative that there's something improper about my role at Westbrook. What do you propose? Charles asked. I'll take a 3-day absence to allow the initial media frenzy to settle. During that time, I'll work with our PR team to prepare a comprehensive statement and strategy. Johnny will continue overseeing the Nexus project, and Felicia will handle day-to-day operations with Charles's support. I paused, gathering my thoughts. But when I return, it will be as the CEO this company has always had, just without the anonymity. Westbrook's success over the past 15 years wasn't an accident or a deception. It was the result of strategic leadership, investment in the right talent, and a clear vision for the future. That hasn't changed simply because my name is now public. After some discussion, the board agreed to my proposal, though I could sense the lingering doubts from several members. When the call ended, I sat alone in the quiet office, the weight of the day finally crashing down on me. My marriage was over. My professional anonymity was gone. My carefully constructed life had been exposed and dissected for public consumption. For the first time since this all began, I allowed myself a moment of genuine emotion. A single tear slid down my cheek, followed by another, and then I was sobbing. Great. Heaving cries that seemed to come from the deepest part of me. I had lost so much today. But strangely, as the tears subsided, I felt something I hadn't expected. Relief. The exhaustion of maintaining dual identities, of hiding my accomplishments, of supporting Sean's ego while concealing my own contributions. All of that was finally over. I was just Lorna now. Not Sean's supportive wife. Not L.H. Hayes, the mysterious investor. Just Lorna Hayes Westbrook, standing in the harsh light of public scrutiny. But finally, authentically myself. I texted Felicia. Tell my father I'll take the jet tonight. 3 days? Then I'm coming back stronger. It was time to regroup, to gather my strength for the battles ahead. Because this crisis point wasn't the end of my story. It was just the beginning of a new chapter. My father's estate in Woodside had always been a sanctuary. Nestled in the wooded hills south of San Francisco, the sprawling property offered both security and seclusion, exactly what I needed right now. The private jet had landed at a small airfield where Cooper had arranged discreet transportation. By midnight, I was sitting in my father's study, a glass of scotch in hand, watching the continued media coverage of my unmasking on multiple screens. You did the right thing coming here, my father said, entering the room and pouring himself a drink. At 75, Richard Hayes remained imposing. Tall, silver-haired, with the sharp eyes of a man who had built an investment empire, through equal parts vision and ruthlessness. The vultures would have torn you apart if you'd stayed. I'll have to face them eventually, I replied, staring into my glass. On your terms, not theirs. He settled into his leather chair across from me. Margaret has already engaged our crisis management team. By the time you return to San Francisco, we'll have a strategy in place. I nodded absently, my mind still processing the day's events. Did you ever suspect about Sean and the Blackwells? My father's expression darkened. I had concerns about his ambition from the beginning. But corporate espionage? No. I thought he was smarter than that. So did I murmured. We sat in companionable silence for a while, the only sound the occasional ping of my phone as updates and messages continued to flood in. Finally, my father spoke again, his voice gentler than usual. You know, when you first told me about your plan to invest in Westbrook anonymously, I thought it was foolish sentimentality, hiding your identity to protect a young man's pride. He shook his head slightly. But over the years, I've watched you build something remarkable. Not just a successful company, but a leadership style entirely your own. You've proven yourself, in ways I never imagined. Coming from Richard Hayes, this was extraordinary praise. I felt tears threatening again and quickly blinked them away. Thank you, I said simply. Get some sleep, he advised, rising from his chair. Tomorrow will be soon enough to plan your next move. But sleep proved elusive. I spent hours reviewing press coverage, monitoring Westbrook's stock price in international markets, and scanning the flood of emails from colleagues, acquaintances, and journalists seeking comment. Around dawn, I finally drifted off, only to be awakened by Felicia's call a few hours later. Sean's requested a meeting, she said without preamble. He says it's urgent and he wants to speak with you privately. I sat up, instantly alert. Did he say what about? Only that it concerns both your personal situation and the company's future. He seemed different, almost conciliatory. Where and when? He suggested dinner tonight. Neutral ground, the private dining room at the Rosewood. Said he'd come alone. I considered this. The Rosewood was a discreet, upscale venue where Silicon Valley's elite often conducted sensitive business. Private enough for a frank conversation. Public enough that neither of us could lose our temper without consequences. What do you think? I asked Felicia, valuing her insight. I think he's realized his victim narrative isn't gaining as much traction as he hoped. she replied candidly. The tech community knows your reputation as L.H. Hayes, even if they didn't know your identity. Many of them are more impressed than scandalized by the revelation. This aligned with some of the industry reactions I'd been monitoring overnight. While the mainstream media focused on the personal drama, tech publications had begun publishing analyses of my leadership at Westbrook, with many praising the company's strategic direction under my guidance. Tell him I'll meet him, I decided. 8 p.m. The Rosewood was as discreet as promised. I was escorted through a side entrance to avoid the handful of photographers still following the story, and led to a private dining room where Sean was already waiting. He stood as I entered, and I was struck by how tired he looked, as if he'd aged years in the 2 days since our confrontation in the boardroom. Gone was the confident executive, replaced by a man who seemed both diminished and wary. "Thank you for coming," he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. "Your message sounded urgent," I replied, keeping my tone neutral as I took my seat. Server appeared with water and wine, then discreetly withdrew, leaving us alone. Sean took a deep breath. "I want to apologize for the interview. It was reactionary. I was angry and hurt, and I lashed out. This was unexpected." "You were pretty thorough in painting me as a manipulative control freak," I observed. "I know." He had the grace to look ashamed. "It wasn't fair or accurate. The truth is, your leadership at Westbrook has been exemplary. The company wouldn't be what it is today without you." I studied him carefully, looking for the angle, the hidden agenda behind this sudden change of heart. "What brought on this epiphany?" He poured himself some water, his hand trembling slightly. "Reality, I suppose. After the FBI questioned me yesterday, I realized how serious this situation is. Morgan and Trevor weren't just interested in a partnership. They were systematically extracting our technology for overseas investors." "You didn't know?" I asked, genuinely curious. "I knew they wanted access to Nexus. I thought it was for legitimate business purposes, expanding applications, securing investment." He shook his head. "I was naive, or willfully blind, maybe both." The server returned with our appetizers, giving me a moment to process this admission. When we were alone again, Sean continued, "I've spoken with my attorney. With the evidence the FBI has collected, I'm looking at potential federal charges unless I cooperate fully." He met my eyes directly. "Which I intend to do." "I see," I said carefully. "And how does this relate to our meeting tonight?" "I want to propose a solution that could benefit both of us, and Westbrook." He leaned forward, his voice taking on that familiar, passionate tone I'd heard so many times when he was pitching a new idea. "I'll provide complete testimony about the Blackwell's activities. In exchange, I'm hoping the company won't press additional civil charges." "That's between you and the board," I pointed out. "But your influence matters," he countered. "As for us personally, I'm prepared to offer a clean, uncontested divorce. No alimony claims, no extended legal battle. You keep the penthouse, of course, and all shared assets." "Very generous," I said dryly, "considering most of those assets are in my name anyway." He flinched slightly but pressed on. "There's more. I've been working on a breakthrough modification to the neural mapping algorithm. It could accelerate Nexus development by months, maybe years. I'm willing to complete this work and transfer all rights to Westbrook, regardless of my employment status." Now we were getting to it. Sean wasn't just seeking legal protection, he was angling to preserve his professional legacy. "In other words," I summarized, "you'll cooperate with the FBI, agree to a simple divorce, and provide your latest research. If I convince the board to let you quietly resign instead of being fired for cause." He nodded slowly. "It's a compromise that keeps the company's technology moving forward and avoids a prolonged public battle that would harm Westbrook's reputation." It was, I had to admit, a rational proposal. The company would benefit from his research and avoid further negative publicity. Sean would salvage some of his professional reputation and avoid additional legal complications. On paper, it made perfect sense. "I'll need time to consider this," I said finally. "Of course." He reached across the table, hesitating before withdrawing, his hand without touching mine. "And Lorna, for what it's worth, I am sorry. Not just for the Blackwell situation, but for how I've treated you these past few years. You deserved better." Back in the safety of my father's estate, I recounted the dinner conversation to Felicia over a secure line. "It sounds too neat," she said immediately, her suspicion evident even through the phone. "Sean doesn't make concessions unless he's getting something significant in return. The avoidance of additional legal trouble is pretty significant, I pointed out. "Maybe," she acknowledged. "But his sudden remorse and cooperation? That doesn't sound like the Sean Westbrook I know." I had the same nagging doubt. Throughout our marriage, Sean had never been one to admit fault or back down from a position once taken. His contrition tonight had seemed genuine, but 15 years of experience had taught me to be cautious about his sudden shifts in attitude. "Have Cooper look into any communications between Sean and the Blackwells since the board meeting," I instructed, "and check if he's had contact with any board members directly." "Already on it," Felicia assured me. "Cooper's been monitoring his company email and phone. Nothing suspicious yet, but we'll keep watching." After we hung up, I walked out onto the terrace, gazing at the moonlit gardens of my childhood home. Sean's offer tugged at something deep inside me, a desire for clean resolution, for an end to the public spectacle our lives had become. If his proposal was genuine, it would allow Westbrook to move forward with minimal disruption and give me space to rebuild my own life and leadership. But years of business negotiations had taught me that when a deal seems too perfect, there's usually a hidden catch. What wasn't Sean telling me? What card was he holding back? As I stood there contemplating, my phone chimed with a text from Johnny. Checking Sean's latest algorithm modifications. "Something doesn't add up. Need to talk. Before you make any decisions." And just like that, the brief flicker of hope for a clean resolution dimmed. Whatever game Sean was playing, it wasn't over yet. The next morning, Johnny arrived at my father's estate, looking like he hadn't slept in days. His usually neat appearance was disheveled, and he clutched a tablet and several flash drives as if they contained state secrets. "I need to show you something," he said without preamble as we settled in my father's home office. "I've been reviewing the algorithm modifications Sean mentioned." "You have access to them already?" I asked, surprised. Johnny nodded grimly. "He uploaded them to the company server last night after your dinner meeting, marked them as priority review, LH Hayes only. The timestamp was 11:42 p.m., too. That was barely an hour after we'd parted ways." Sean had clearly prepared this material in advance, anticipating I would be receptive to his proposal. "At first glance, the modifications look brilliant," Johnny continued, connecting his tablet to the large display on the wall. "It's a new approach to filtering neural impulses that could dramatically improve response time and accuracy in the interface." Lines of complex code filled the screen, along with neural pathway diagrams that were far beyond my technical expertise. "If this works, it would be a significant advancement," I acknowledged. "Oh, it works," Johnny confirmed. "I tested it on our simulation platform this morning. The performance improvements are impressive, exactly as Sean claimed." "So, what's the problem?" Johnny's expression darkened as he tapped the screen, highlighting a particular section of code. "This part here isn't just an algorithm improvement. It's a backdoor access protocol, buried inside the neural mapping function." My blood ran cold. A backdoor? For what purpose? "It would allow a secondary system to monitor and potentially access any neural interface running this code." Johnny's voice was tight with controlled anger. In practical terms, it means whoever controls this backdoor could potentially monitor thought patterns processed through the interface or even inject commands. The implications were staggering and terrifying. The Nexus project wasn't just about controlling computers with thoughts. It was designed to help paralyzed patients regain mobility through neural-controlled prosthetics. A backdoor could give someone unauthorized access to those neural connections. Could this be an innocent, debugging feature? I asked, though I already suspected the answer. Johnny shook his head. No way. It's deliberately obfuscated, hidden inside legitimate code. I only found it because I wrote the original architecture and recognized patterns that didn't belong. He looked up at me, his expression grave. Lorna, this isn't just corporate espionage anymore. This is something much worse. I took a deep breath, processing the implications. Do you think the Blackwells know about this? Almost certainly. The backdoor connects to an external authentication server. I traced the domain, registration to a shell company, but the IP address routes to servers owned by subsidiaries of Blackwell Investments. My mind raced, connecting dots I should have seen earlier. The FBI mentioned foreign entities interested in our technology. If the Blackwells are working with them, then this could be an attempt at creating a surveillance tool of unprecedented invasiveness, Johnny finished. Neural monitoring at the deepest level. I stood, pacing the length of the office. Make copies of everything. Send one to our security team, one to the FBI, and keep one offline as backup. And Johnny, keep this between us for now. Not even Felicia or Cooper. He nodded, understanding the need for absolute discretion. What are you going to do? I checked. My watch. It was just past 10 in the morning. I'm going back to San Francisco. Today. By early afternoon, I was ensconced in a suite at the Four Seasons, not far from Westbrook headquarters. The hotel had a private entrance and excellent security, essential requirements given the circumstances. Sean had texted twice since our dinner, his messages carefully worded to sound supportive while pushing for a quick decision on his proposal. Hope you've had time to consider our discussion. The algorithm modifications could be transformative for Nexus. Let me know when you'd like to move forward. And later, board meeting scheduled for tomorrow. If we present a united front on this resolution, we could put the whole unfortunate situation behind us quickly. I didn't respond directly. Instead, I called Charles Bennett and requested an emergency conference with the executive committee, without Sean's knowledge. We have a serious security concern that requires immediate attention, I explained, but we need absolute discretion. To his credit, Charles didn't press for details over the phone. 2 hours later, he arrived at my suite along with Chuck Peterson and our chief legal officer, Evan Miller. Johnny presented his findings, walking them through the technical details of the backdoor and its implications. The room grew increasingly tense as the full scope of the threat became clear. This is beyond corporate espionage, Evan said, examining the legal documents Johnny had prepared. If this code had been implemented in medical neural interfaces, it could potentially violate numerous regulations and laws, HIPAA, FDA guidelines, possibly even national security provisions. The question, Charles interjected, is whether Sean created this backdoor himself or if he was given it by the Blackwells to implement. Either way, he knew what he was doing, Johnny insisted. This code is too carefully crafted, too deliberately hidden to be accidental. Chuck, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke. What's our next move? If we confront Sean directly, he'll deny everything or claim he didn't understand the implications of the code. I nodded, having considered this problem since Johnny's revelation. We need to catch him in the act, make him reveal his intentions in a way he can't deny or explain away. You're suggesting a sting operation, Evan said, his legal mind immediately identifying potential issues. That carries risks, both legally and for the company's reputation. The alternative is allowing Sean to position himself as a wronged eye, Party who was generously offering his brilliant research to save the company, I countered. We need incontrovertible evidence of his intentions. After considerable discussion, we settled on a plan. I would contact Sean, expressing tentative interest in his proposal, but requesting a technical demonstration of the algorithm modifications. The meeting would take place at Westbrook headquarters the following evening, with FBI agents monitoring from an adjacent room. We'll need him to explicitly confirm what the back door is for, Evan cautioned. Plausible deniability is his best defense, so we have to eliminate that possibility. Leave that to me, I said with a confidence I didn't entirely feel. I know how to get Sean talking about his technological achievements. I texted Sean later that evening. I've considered your proposal. The board is interested in your algorithm modifications. Can you demonstrate the implementation tomorrow at 7 p.m.? Private lab, just us and Johnny. His response came almost immediately. Absolutely. I can show you exactly how transformative this will be for Nexus. Thank you for considering this, Lorna. It's the right decision for everyone. The ease with which he agreed confirmed my suspicions. Sean wasn't just looking for legal protection or professional redemption. He was actively trying to get his compromised code into our systems. As I prepared for bed in the anonymous luxury of the hotel suite, I found myself reflecting on the 15 years of our marriage. Had Sean always been capable of this level of deception? Or had ambition and opportunity gradually eroded whatever ethical boundaries he once possessed? I remembered the earnest young engineer who had captured my heart at Berkeley, his blue eyes alight with visions of technology that could help people, change lives, make the world better. Had that idealistic young man been genuine, or just another calculated performance? The thought that I might never have truly known my husband of 15 years was more painful than the betrayal itself. It called into question every memory, every moment I had cherished, every decision I had made based on my belief in his essential goodness. My phone rang, interrupting these dark reflections. It was Agent Evans from the FBI. Mrs. Westbrook, we've completed our initial analysis of the code your CTO provided. I'll be blunt. This is concerning enough that we've elevated it to our cyber division's top priority. The potential applications for unauthorized neural monitoring represent a significant national security concern. What does that mean for tomorrow's meeting? I asked. We'll have a full tactical team on standby, but we're hoping for a controlled conversation that reveals his connections and intentions. The more information he provides voluntarily, the stronger our case. And if he realizes it's a trap? There was a brief pause. We'll be monitoring closely. Your safety is our priority. After we hung up, I stood by the window, looking out at the San Francisco skyline, the same view I had shared with Sean for years from our penthouse. Tomorrow, I would face not just my estranged husband, but the architect of what might be the most intimate form of surveillance ever conceived. The ultimate betrayal wasn't his affair with Morgan, or even his planned departure from our marriage. It was his willingness to corrupt the technology we had built together, technology designed to help people, and turn it into a tool for invasion and control. As I finally drifted toward sleep, one thought remained clear. Whatever happened tomorrow would definitively end the chapter of my life that included Sean Westbrook. The only question was what price we would both pay for that conclusion. Westbrook's neural interface lab hummed with tension as I arrived with Johnny to confront Sean. FBI surveillance equipment was hidden throughout the room, with Agent Evans monitoring from next door. At 7 p.m., Sean entered, surprisingly confident as he launched into his presentation. The neural filtering system processes signals 40% faster than our current model, he explained, his technical brilliance undeniable despite the hidden danger we'd discovered. I pointed to the suspicious code. I'm curious about this section. It seems unusual for a filtering algorithm. That's an auxiliary monitoring system, Sean replied smoothly. It helps track performance metrics, Johnny pressed further. It's sending data to an external server. That's not standard for our architecture. Sean's eyes narrowed slightly. It's a secure cloud instance I've set up for testing. We continued, our careful questioning until Sean finally sensed the trap. His laptop snapped shut. You know, don't you? We found the back door, Johnny confirmed. The question is why you put it there. Sean's transformation was chilling. The passionate technologist disappeared, replaced by a cold stranger wearing my husband's face. Do you have any idea what we're sitting on here? He asked, leaning forward. Neural interface technology isn't just about helping patients. It's about direct access to human cognition. Whoever controls this technology controls the future of human thought itself. What was the backdoor designed to do? I asked quietly. Monitor and influence, Sean admitted. First, we collect data, thought patterns, decision-making processes, emotional responses. Then we learn to identify patterns, preferences, vulnerabilities. Eventually, we develop the capacity for subtle guidance. You mean thought manipulation, I said, sickened. I mean helping people make better decisions. He corrected with frightening conviction. Imagine eliminating cognitive biases, reducing harmful impulses. The possibilities are limitless. And who decides what's better? Johnny demanded. You? The Blackwells? Their foreign investors? The FBI has traced the server connections to front companies linked to foreign intelligence services, I added. This isn't advancement, Sean. It's surveillance and control. He laughed. Short, sharp, almost pitying. Of course it's about control. Every transformative technology in history has been about control. Most people just lack the vision to recognize it. In my earpiece, Agent Evans spoke. We've got what we need. Agents moving in. Sean leaned forward, suddenly earnest. You could still be part of this, Lorna. The divorce, Morgan. That was a mistake, a distraction. What we're discussing is bigger than personal relationships. His casual dismissal of our 15-year marriage as a mere distraction crystallized something inside me. Whatever love I had once felt was finally, irrevocably gone. I've shaped how this technology evolves for 15 years, I said coldly, without hidden back doors or delusions of controlling human thought. The door opened as FBI agents entered. Dr. Sean Westbrook, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit corporate espionage, unauthorized computer access, and violations of the Economic Espionage Act. Sean's shock quickly turned to anger. You set me up. You did that yourself? I replied. I just made sure there were witnesses. As they led him away, he called back. 15 years, Lorna. I gave you 15 years of my life, and this is how you repay me? By throwing me to the wolves? The irony was almost too much. No, Sean. This is how I protect 15 years of work from being corrupted by your ambition. When he was gone, Johnny placed a supportive hand on my shoulder. You okay? I wasn't sure how to answer. My husband had just been arrested for federal crimes. The man I had loved for 15 years had revealed himself to be someone I barely recognized. I will be, I finally said. It wasn't true yet, but I hoped it would be someday. Agent Evans returned briefly. What you did today potentially prevented a serious threat to national security. Not many people would have had the courage to confront their spouse like that. His words were meant to comfort, but they only underscored the devastating personal cost of today's victory. My husband was gone, not just from my marriage, but potentially from society for years to come. And I had played a key role in putting him there. The morning after Sean's arrest, Westbrook Technologies was in crisis. News of the FBI raid had leaked to the press, and speculation was running wild. The stock had plummeted 18% in pre-market trading, and employees were gathering in shocked clusters throughout the building. I arrived at headquarters at 7 a.m., summoning the executive team to an emergency meeting. Felicia had worked through the night preparing talking points and arranging interviews with key tech publications to control the narrative. We need to be transparent about what happened without compromising the federal investigation, she advised as we gathered in the boardroom. Johnny nodded. The engineering teams are particularly shaken. Sean was their leader, their visionary. They need reassurance about the future of their projects. The board is divided, Charles added. Some members want immediate distance from Sean, while others are concerned about the impact on our neural interface patents if his contributions are tainted by criminal charges. I listened to each concern, feeling the weight of 15 years of leadership, both hidden and now exposed. When everyone had spoken, I stood at the head of the table. Today marks a turning point for Westbrook, I began, not just because of recent events, but because we're finally aligning our public identity with our private reality. I've led this company from the shadows for 15 years. Now I'll lead it from the light. I outlined a three-part strategy. First, a company-wide address where I would introduce myself properly to all employees and address their concerns directly. Second, a press conference announcing a comprehensive security audit of all our technology to ensure no other backdoors existed. Third, an accelerated timeline for the Nexus project's legitimate medical applications. The neural interface technology was always meant to help people, not control them, I emphasized. We're going to refocus on that mission, publicly and emphatically. As the meeting concluded, my father called. The federal prosecutor contacted me, he said without preamble. They want to meet with you privately before filing formal charges against Sean. When? This afternoon. Margaret will accompany you. His tone softened slightly. How are you holding up? I glanced out at the San Francisco skyline from the CEO's office. My office now, both in name and reality. I'm standing, I answered honestly. After hanging up, I prepared for my first official address as the public leader of Westbrook Technologies. For 15 years, I had built this company while hiding behind a pseudonym, accommodating Sean's ego, subjugating my own achievements. That era was over. The company faced challenges: legal scrutiny, media speculation, market volatility, employee uncertainty. But for the first time in years, I felt a strange clarity. No more shadows, no more divided identity, no more compromised values. As I reviewed my speech, Felicia entered with updated talking points. Ready? She asked. I nodded, rising from my desk. It's time everyone met the real Lorna Hayes Westbrook. The Westbrook Technologies auditorium was filled beyond capacity. Employees crowded the aisles, while others watched via video feed from conference rooms throughout the building. The nervousness in the room was palpable. These were people whose careers, projects, and financial futures had been thrown into uncertainty overnight. I took a deep breath and stepped onto the stage, facing my company, truly facing them for the first time. Good morning, I began. Most of you know me as Lorna Westbrook, Sean's wife and the founder of the Hayes Foundation for Women in STEM. Some of you have interacted with me as L.H. Hayes, the majority shareholder who joined board meetings via video conference. Today, I stand before you as both of those people and as the CEO of Westbrook Technologies. A murmur ran through the crowd. I continued, addressing the elephant in the room directly. Yesterday, Dr. Sean Westbrook was arrested by the FBI for corporate espionage and attempting to implement unauthorized surveillance capabilities into our neural interface technology. These are serious allegations that will be addressed through proper legal channels. What matters now is where we go from here. For the next 30 minutes, I outlined our path forward: the security audit, the refocused mission, the accelerated development timeline. I answered questions honestly, even difficult ones about my dual identity and my marriage. Why keep your leadership secret for 15 years? Asked one senior engineer. Initially, it was to allow Sean's technical vision to flourish without being overshadowed by my family's financial backing, I explained. Over time, it became complicated. The arrangement worked for the company, even as it became increasingly problematic personally. In hindsight, I stayed in the shadows too long. As I spoke, I could feel the mood in the room shifting, the initial shock and uncertainty giving way to something else, cautious optimism, perhaps even a renewed sense of purpose. The neural interface technology we've all worked so hard to develop has extraordinary potential to help people, I concluded. That mission hasn't changed. If anything, recent events have reminded us how crucial it is to develop this technology ethically and transparently. I'm asking each of you to recommit to that vision. Not Sean's vision, not my vision, but our collective vision of technology that enhances human capability without compromising human autonomy. When I finished speaking, there was a moment of silence. Then, from the back of the room, someone began to applaud. Others joined in, and soon the entire auditorium was filled with applause, not the polite kind that signals the end of a speech, but the genuine kind that signals the beginning of something new. As I stepped off the stage, Johnny approached with a tablet displaying real-time market data. Westbrook's stock, which had plummeted in pre-market trading, was beginning to recover. "They're with you," he said quietly. "We all are." For 15 years, I had built this company from the shadows. Now, stepping into the light, I discovered that the foundation I had laid was stronger than I had realized, strong enough to withstand even this betrayal, this public transformation. This was the turning point. Not just for Westbrook Technologies, but for me. 3 weeks after Sean's arrest, I sat in the federal prosecutor's office reviewing the evidence against him. The case had expanded far beyond our initial discovery, revealing a conspiracy more extensive than anyone had imagined. "The Blackwells didn't act alone," explained Assistant U.S. Attorney Melissa Chen, spreading documents across the conference table. "We've traced financial transactions linking them to several foreign entities interested in neural monitoring technology. Sean was a key player, but not the mastermind. The evidence was damning. Emails, financial records, technical specifications shared through encrypted channels. Morgan Blackwell had been more than Sean's mistress. She had been his handler, carefully, cultivating his ego and ambition while extracting Westbrook's intellectual property. Trevor Blackwell has agreed to cooperate in exchange for reduced charges," Chen continued. "He's implicated several foreign nationals, which has triggered a broader counterintelligence investigation." "And Morgan?" I asked. "Fled the country 2 days after Sean's arrest. Interpol has issued a notice, but she likely had contingency plans." I nodded, unsurprised. Morgan had always been calculating, a quality I might have admired under different circumstances. "And Sean?" My voice remained steady despite the churning emotions beneath. Chen's expression softened slightly. "He's rejected all plea offers. Insists the technology was his to control, regardless of legal ownership. His attorneys are exploring an insanity defense based on grandiose delusions, but preliminary psychological evaluations don't support it." The irony was bitter. Sean's brilliance and vision, qualities I had once loved, had curdled into something dangerous, destructive. His ambition, untethered from ethical constraints, had led him to this place. A cell in a federal detention center, facing decades in prison. As I left the Justice Department building, my phone buzzed with a news alert. Blackwell Investments. Collapses amid espionage scandal. Investors flee. Another notification followed. Westbrook Technologies stock reaches new high as neural interface passes FDA safety review. The contrast couldn't have been clearer. While the Blackwell empire crumbled under the weight of its corrupt practices, Westbrook was thriving, its technology advancing, its reputation strengthening, its mission clarified. Back at my office, Felicia had left a sealed envelope on my desk. Inside was the final divorce decree, ready for my signature. 15 years of marriage, dissolved in a few strokes of a pen. I signed without hesitation, closing this chapter of deception and betrayal. Sean had made his choices. Now he would live with the consequences, as would I, though mine were proving far more favorable than his. 6 months after Sean's arrest, Westbrook Technologies had not merely survived, it had flourished. Under my public leadership, we had refocused on medical applications for neural interface technology, launching a groundbreaking system that allowed paralyzed patients to control prosthetic limbs with unprecedented precision. The company's value had doubled. Our ethical stance on neural technology had attracted both talent and investment. The shadows of scandal had receded, replaced by recognition of our innovations and our commitment to responsible development. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.